Episode number 5
Episode number
of this podcast. Six? Oh, it's been 4 months. If you were waiting for this episode, I'm sorry that it's been so long. I doubt many people were waiting. But anyway, let's get into it.
7 people.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, today we've been talking a lot lately, and about what direction we want to take this podcast and such.
We've been listening to podcasts.
A lot of podcasts
by other people, trying to get an idea. For instance, Lex Friedman. Obviously there's Joe Rogan, Ethan Klein, all the famous podcast people, whatever.
Yeah.
But we kind of want to. We kind of want to get guests on our podcast, and we're not sure. We're open to any type of guest. We like science, we like artificial intelligence, and such. That happens to be what Lex Friedman's podcast is all about. But the problem is Lex Friedman has a network. He's a professor at MIT. Joe Rogan has a network. He's been in film before.
And comedy and
Friends. But anyway, enough of that. Today, computer science. That's the topic.
Computer science.
Code.
Stuff going on.
Learning. College.
Code burnout.
Life plan. Right. Yeah. Life plans.
And just all around. And we were talking about today trying to get a more, a better flow with the podcast and just overall.
Make it more conversational. We had a conversation about this on the way here, about how conversation itself, there is a formula to it, definitely, but it's one of those things that you can't be too analytical about because it has to come natural. And the natural aspect of it is the complicated part of the formula. You know what I mean?
Trying to replicate.
It's something that you do subconsciously on most occasions, and it's
like with everyday life, just talking to your friends.
And I can say that, I guess, from experience, but more from the fact that they're trying right now in the computer science world to create artificial intelligence agents that can have a decent conversation for X amount of time. There's something called the Turing test.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that's part of one aspect of the Turing test is conversation, to determine whether your AI is true AI or general AI.
Yeah, and another aspect of this, there's like games and such that are being developed. They're like dating simulators, like games that will sound realistic and they can over time learn traits and things, and even some things they're not always available. Like you'll open the game or the app like on your phone, or actually it's on DS, that's where I saw it, and they're not always available. Like you can't just talk to them whenever. It makes it just more like a real person and real conversation to where they tell you about their day even though they just been in the game.
Have you heard of Sophia the robot?
Sophia?
Yeah, I'm not sure who developed it. Ben Goertzel is one of the developers of Sophia the robot. And she goes around doing these talks about robot rights, and you know how someone would talk about human rights and
like civil liberties,
civil rights, right? Exactly, that type of thing.
But
for robots, and it's weird because the media took that to mean that this AI is actually true AI, or in other words, human level intelligence, which means it can learn. It has aspects of human intelligence. Anyway,
so would they be protected?
It's actually not.
What do you think about that? Like, I would say just at the rate things are growing right now, technology-wise, I could see in like 20, 30 years, like there'd be robot rights activists.
Lex Friedman likes to talk about that. In fact, he had these little Roombas that he was messing with. I don't know if you've ever heard of what's his name? The other guy that programmed the Roombas.
Michael
Reeves. You know how Michael Reeves had him cuss and stuff? Well, Lex Friedman did some of the same stuff. He had him like shout out in pain when they hit a wall or whatever. And he was saying that to him, those robots, those AI, is the way he put it, seem to have consciousness.
So which is an aspect of I think that's more of like a projection of our own selves, like
right. It's not really a true consciousness, exactly. And he said that in when he was talking about Sophia the robot, because Sophia the Robot has fooled a lot of people, you know, and actually people, the creators of Sophia the Robot have told people, look, this isn't true AI. This isn't a human level conscious being. This is just computer code that's run really, really cleverly.
Algorithms.
Algorithms. And people said, oh, well, you know, they don't really care. You know, the media just eats it up. And, you know, obviously they're concerned about views, but that's what gets views. And the same thing with this. That's why Lex Friedman brought up the Roombas, because he said he himself was easily fooled. You know, when he started hearing, you know, cries of pain, you know, his subconscious kind of thought, oh no, you know, something's wrong. And when in reality, obviously, they're not conscious, but it's just that he was trying to bring up the point, when is something considered conscious? Does it just have to do with, you know, the output you're receiving from that?
I was thinking about this other day, because I started thinking about, you know, with this whole coronavirus thing going on, I started thinking about viruses and how sometimes they're not always defined as, like, real life or whatever.
Right.
And I got to thinking, and I was like, in my mind, something like that's alive and real is just like a collection of particles. If you imagine the whole universe as just a bunch of interchanging particles moving through a field, or, you know, whatever you want, a space, and then these just keep passing through and they exchange, but they still hold the same form. Like, as a person, you're made of a bunch of, you know, molecules and atoms that make up your hand and your whole body. But they're constantly changing. You know, you're constantly making more skin cells, more bone.
So where...
It's just you're taking things in. You're taking things in. You're maintaining a form.
So there has to be something more than just the pure deterministic view of, like, you know... there has to be something more to consciousness and to humans.
That's what I define as living, though. But consciousness is more of, in my opinion, something being able to feel the difference in between, like,
there's some really smart
happiness.
people that have defined consciousness, but it's kind of something that's really hard to define, because you have to do it introspectively, because you can't examine consciousness except from, you can't only examine your own consciousness. You know, it's kind of hard to, you have a, I guess you could say, limited perspective. You can't, it's hard to see it from the outside. It's something you only experience from the inside, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what makes it hard to define. I'm not really sure.
I think with consciousness, like, the biggest stepstone from, like, robots just being, you know, ones and zeros on a screen or whatever you want to call it, and then becoming something that's more than that and could be defined as alive and, like, someone that someone could have a relationship with or something like that. I think it's the ability to, like, it sounds kind of cheesy, but, like, love other creatures. Like,
there's a lot of people that
care
think
about another creature more than themselves, other than just reproduce or just one set goal that was programmed into it. It's like a changing thing, and love for other beings.
Love is the foundation.
Yeah, like some sort of, like, you know, let's say that you were in love with a computer that was connected to some sort of cloud network that could control, like, some robotics in your homes and your lights and such. And then that computer came to a decision where it could power off your whole house because of some electrical shock. You know, some sort of life and death situation on the person's hand. And it chose to eliminate itself for the protection of the person when it was an option not to.
See, when I think of that makes sense that you would say that that's a foundation for, like, you know, like, actual human level intelligence. But it seems to me that it's just another action that you could program. And it's hard to make the distinction between...
Protection specifically, though, is something you could program. But
Right.
I mean, like, emotion in general.
Okay, emotion. Yeah, I don't know.
But
I guess
then again,
there's a deepness to emotion that you can't really program.
But then again, it's just a certain complexity. That's all it really is.
Yeah, and there's a guest on the Lex Friedman podcast, Roger Penrose. He's a physicist, I want to say, famous physicist, and he was concerned with consciousness and how, and the biological origin of consciousness. And he said he did some research back in his day. He actually wrote a book called The Emperor's New Mind, I think. I haven't read it, but I've heard it's a really good book. And he said he studied, like, what happens when people are put under general anesthesia.
Anesthesia?
Yeah. And biologically, what happens? There's these things called microtubules that are in your cells, uh, and their function is. I'm so bad at biology. I want to say they have something to do with mitosis, and splitting of the cells.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar with biology, he's talking about cell replication
Yeah.
and I guess some sort of inhibitants.
Something like cell replication, and what they are is there's these long tubes, microtubules.
Mm-hmm.
There's tubes, and then they form this like cylinder of tubes, with I want to say I don't know if it's hollow. Anyway, what they do is they split the cell into two unique but similar cells. A copy of the cell. I guess I could say.
And then under general anesthesia.
Right, and in general anesthesia, what actually happens is the microtubules shut off in your brain cells.
So cell replication isn't happening.
I think that's what. Biologically, I'm kind of hazy on it, but all I know is it has to do with the microtubules, something to do with them shutting off. And so Roger Penrose says, well, hey, that's what's happening. But that's still not really the answer to how to create consciousness, right? And so he actually, being a physicist, knows a lot about quantum mechanics. And he didn't get into this on the podcast, but for some reason, the shape of the microtubule is really really relevant in quantum mechanics. Like that shape is prevalent in both biology and quantum mechanics for some reason. Maybe it's the shape of an orbit. I don't really know, but he found some link between microtubules and quantum mechanics, and then he suggested that perhaps consciousness is not pure computation like many artificial intelligence proponents like to believe.
So your brain's not just a really fancy computer.
Right. And he's arguing that against the assumption that we can create consciousness through these humongous computers that just have huge computational power. He's saying that there's something more, and he thinks it has to do with quantum mechanics and the collapsing of the what's it called? The wave function, the collapsing of the wave function. That's where we're stuck on quantum mechanics right now. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't reconcile with physics, with our accepted view of physics.
Do you know what, like, the wave function of what specifically he was talking about, like in the brain?
No, you'd have to listen to the podcast, and this is where I guess I'll give the Lex Friedman shout out officially. The Lex Friedman podcast, it's on YouTube, it's on Apple Podcasts. You should check it out. It's really good. If you want just a general view of a lot of different things
and artificial
that are tied to artificial intelligence, then you should check it out because he's a professor at MIT and he's really knowledgeable, and he also has an open mind, so it's really awesome.
Yeah, and I want to talk about as well, while we're on the topic of like consciousness and such, specifically with humans upgrading them. I was learning about this thing and the gene editing world, like of biology, where certain biologists or chemists and such, they're developing a thing. It's an editing tool. It's known as CRISPR. Mm-hmm. What this is a type of, I think it was a bacteriophage. I'm not certain, but basically all you really need to know is that there's certain spacers along these, and these are in a pattern that we can replicate in other forms. And their job is what they think their job is going into different cells and such, and basically like a protective system, similar to white blood cells in the body, if you're familiar with that. They go in and they can splice, they can delete like segments of DNA or RNA where it's replicated, and their job is to help prevent mutations and things like that in the cell. And so what they're talking about doing is using these CRISPR and then designing their own to where they can send them in through an injection, and they can completely change how your RNA replicates in different species and stuff, and they could change directly the outcome. And what they're talking about doing is using this, they could modify human beings to make them more intelligent, to make them stronger, to make them live longer.
Kind of
like
where
cancer is basically inevitable. Like, you can't ever have it.
Oh, cancer.
Like, cancer can't happen. It's curable completely. And then they could completely eliminate diabetes from the human species as a whole. Things like that. And they could all around change it to where... And I started thinking of that, and I was like, well, see, the issue with making people smarter, which is one of their goals, I was like, I don't. You can't necessarily improve someone's knowledge because it's a learned trait, obviously. But what you can improve is their ability to retain it and their ability to comprehend things quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I started thinking about, with consciousness specifically, you can't, like with emotions and such, those will always be a part of us, in my opinion. And no matter how much you try to upgrade how quickly we learn things and stuff, they're still going to need that motivation behind it. And I feel like it's a really difficult thing, especially nowadays whenever... Because at this point, basically, our phones and such, we're close to becoming cyborgs, let's be honest. We're basically cyborgs without the implants.
That's what Elon Musk proposes because he's a genius marketing. He's marketing genius because he wants to implant devices
into the... Yeah. I mean, there's some companies, they have these... actually, I kind of want it. You can get these implants in your hand for audio-only listeners. I'm pointing at in between my thumb and my index finger, the little flabby part. It's a small slice, and they implant this little RFID chip. And basically how those work is you put them close to another sensor, and then there's an electric field that's generated, and there's something called eddy currents. Basically, what you need to understand is if you ever put your phone on a wireless charger, similar to that. And then this will output a serial number. So it's not like smart, it's not going to take over your brain or anything. All it does is output a serial number, similar to a credit card. Like, if you ever done touchless, tapping your credit card.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it's like having a key card everywhere you go. So they can have access to doors. Like, there's companies in practice right now doing this. You can have access to doors just by putting your hand up to it. You can pay. Like, if you're at the cafeteria at work, you walk out the door and it scans your RFID. It already knows you got it. It's like, John got a green apple.
I feel like the problem with that is the tracking that can be implemented using that technology. I feel like privacy is going to be a big concern.
Luckily, the big concern with like tracking and things like that, RFID sensors kind of suck. Like, you have to be right up against something for it's like wireless energy.
Still. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would do that because I have a card.
There's a lot of pushback.
I just put the card up to the thing. Why would I want it in my hand? I get the...
Yeah. It's a step. It's a stepping stone into making something more.
Like...
Something that's more than just a serial number.
So, like, something that's...
Something like maybe an Apple Watch built into you. Think of that.
So, basically just implants in general.
Or possibly even more extra senses in general. Like, I remember seeing...
yeah.
There's a large group of people that are like body modification people, like they like a bunch of piercings and like things like that. What you can do, and actually I really want to perform this soon. I want to talk to you about it. You get one of your fingers, right, and then on the side of it you make a saw incision, and then you add these special type of magnets in it with a coating that won't deteriorate in your body, and then you leave it in there. You let it heal inside your body. And what you do is after a couple months, and it'll heal and adapt to your nervous system, you can actually start to notice things that are ferromagnetic, aka magnetic. You can sense magnetic fields.
So it's like an extension of your touch.
It's an extra sense, yeah. And they were talking about how, I remember listening to a couple different people who have it. They could put their hand on a metal chair, and they could feel it, like before they touch it. Like they could go to reach to pull out a chair.
They could literally. Think of like how you would generally feel a chair. You would put your hand on it and feel it. Are you saying that they could feel it without necessarily physical contact?
Mm-hmm. They could feel the same.
Fields. Is it? My question is it the same? Do you feel the same thing as you would just touching the chair? Is it the same physical phenomena? Or
I don't think it's the same.
Physical.
No, it's totally different. It's a totally different sense of touch.
Right.
They were describing it as more of a pull of the magnet from your finger. Like you could feel it.
Is that touch though? Maybe that's just you feeling the magnet. I don't know if it's necessarily an extra sense.
I just thought it was really
it's
interesting.
Definitely an extension of your sense.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see ourselves just become, because if you think about it, 200 years ago, we didn't even have if someone told you that they were the Senate of State, the only way that you could fact check them is to ask someone else. Right? There was no fact checking on anything 200 years ago. Yeah, like the internet and all that. There wasn't even pictures 200 years ago. And now we're getting to the point where it's like, we use Face ID to open our phone every day. Like, technology is exploding so quickly. I can
Yeah.
see just within the next 30 years, I think it's going to be pretty normal to have implants and things like that.
Maybe so. Personally, I feel like there's going to be a
Pushback?
a wall that they have to vault over for it to be more common. Like, there has to be some really, really good use for people to actually even consider it, and then to get widespread, I feel like it'll take even more time. Maybe in 20, 30 years it'll be a start, but
Here's how I could see it
with
happening.
Elon Musk pushing his Neuralink and all that.
I think it's going to
Surely.
start like this. Imagine that you're a soldier. You go to war. You get your leg blown off, right? Come back home. They got a couple
Prosthetics.
prosthetics. You get a couple prosthetics, right? And
Yeah,
then,
that you're right. That
and
is,
then they're like, okay,
it's not really an implant.
listen,
It's prosthetic, but
we can give you the option of having a prosthetic leg that looks just like a leg, functions just like a leg. The only difference is it's not a leg.
well,
And
yeah,
they give it to you. And then like you're like, yeah, I got a reason. I got my leg blown off. But then you go tell your buddy, and y'all play soccer, and then you kick the soccer ball, and it goes 2 football fields away, and then
I
he,
wanna
and
do
then
that.
and then he's like, you
I
know
want a
what?
prosthetic leg.
I can have a prosthetic leg. I feel the same. It looks the same. It acts the same. The only difference is it's not a leg.
I feel like we're far away from that because improving on our biological physical system as it is now is kind of hard.
Mm-hmm.
We've come a long way through evolution. But yeah, I feel like it's possible for sure.
But I feel like a lot of people would lunge at that opportunity.
I wouldn't.
If it looks
but-
and acts the same except stronger and better overall,
Yeah,
people will leap at the opportunity, and
That-
then
that
it'll
has
just
to-
keep expanding.
you might have a kind of a slight identity crisis though, because you look at your new leg, right? Your new leg that looks the same, feels the same, but you know it's not a leg, and you'll be like, "What am I?" You know, where I think it'll give people an awareness, you know, of the fact that, you know, there's something more to you than just your physical appearance, body, right? Not appearance.
Mm-hmm.
There's the aspect of consciousness and the aspect of like I don't know, intelligence and being able to picture stuff with your mind's eye. You know, there's something deeper. Another thing, a thought experiment I like to put myself through is not really a thought experiment, but just an interesting thought is that every 7 years, I think, the skin cells in your body are completely
New
cycle.
body
Yeah,
skin.
right. And you know, it makes me think: how long does it take for other parts of your body to just completely rejuvenate and be completely different?
Mhm.
Not material.
Completely new thing.
Right.
It's
A
the
new,
same. Remember how I was saying earlier? It's the same thing. It's the same form
Right. It's
with
the same
different,
form,
different materials. Like
material.
it's just constantly changing in and out. Like
Different
things
atoms,
taking the
different
place.
molecules.
Yeah.
Right.
Like a boat. Like if you repair a plank of wood on a boat,
Still
and
a
you
boat.
just keep repairing it, it just still is it still the same boat after you repair every single piece of
It
wood?
still has planks. Yeah. Right.
Like if a piece of wood rots and you replace
If
it,
you replace every part on that boat,
Yeah.
is it still the same boat? I would say.
but it's gradual.
Yes,
over time.
because it has. If you knew the boat, like before you replaced every part, you kind of gave it an identity within your own mind,
Mhm.
and it's still the same boat to you, you know. But I think if someone who didn't know, who knew of the boat, you know, before it was replaced, but who didn't have that extra identity and extra knowledge of the boat, personal knowledge of, you know, like hadn't used the boat before or whatnot, and then knew that it had been replaced, every piece of the boat had been replaced, I would say that they would see it as a new boat. That's just another argument for the fact that there is something beyond the physical, you know,
And I think that's what's happening right now. We're gradually
seeing that.
replacing the boards.
Mm.
That's what's happening, and so it's a lot more. It's a lot more comfortable transition because I feel like with the
Well-
boomers, you could call them, they see like all these implants. Even there's even some pushback behind ocular implants, like in the ear, like that can allow deaf people to hear. There's even some pushback with that because
Really?
they do implants inside the
I
brain.
would think there would be. I'd be
Yeah.
all for it if I was deaf.
Exactly, and then they have some pushback with like let for example the things in the hand. That's highly controversial.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. It seems because it's not very useful. I
Yeah.
get why people would do that. I mean, sure, do it if you want, but like, I
Mhm.
wouldn't do it.
Yeah, but the next level of that Like,
Mhm.
obviously, we replace a lot of things in our body. Like, people have artificial hips. People have, what are those called?
Yeah,
Heart things. What are those
yeah,
called?
I,
Um,
yeah. I know
the
what you're talking about.
steppers.
Yeah, whatever they're called.
People at home, in the comment section, what are those called?
The things that moderate your heartbeat and make sure you don't have a freaking heart attack.
Yeah. Well, yeah, see, but we keep modding ourselves, and I feel like the people who have pushback behind this, I see where they're coming from, but I think for them, it's just because they're not having the same gradual exposure that we are.
Well, they don't see it as useful. They see it as something that's
Because they've lived their whole life without it.
right. They don't have a need for it,
Mhm.
so they're not going to do it because, like I said, they might have that slight kind of ickiness that you might feel, like that kind of identity crisis, like, oh, you know, because they're so attached to their physical body
Mhm.
and what they see with their own eyes, that they forget that there really is something more, or that they take for granted, not necessarily forget, but
It's like buying a
it's
new
really
hat
interesting.
whenever you've worn the same hat for 10 years.
Oh, yeah, kinda, yeah.
Whenever you have attachment to things
Just
that
change.
change
Yeah.
in general. And not even just with like bodies and such, like even with like phones, it's always the same thing. No matter what generation you're in, you're always gonna not like the next generation after you.
It seems to be a trend. Yeah.
Like even with me, and I think like I was born into this world with phones and all that already in existence. Like Steve Jobs made iPhone in like 1999.
He made
2000?
Apple. I think first iPhone was 2009.
Oh well, I know Google came out in 2000.
I don't know.
Just technology in general, I was already born into it. But I know my grandparents, they weren't. And so they have a lot more pushback to it. But then I'm looking at this next generation, and I see them the same way my grandparents see me. You know, in the sense of they're always on TikTok. They're on their phone 13 hours a day.
Also, I feel like with age comes that resistance to change. Maybe because I'm not old, but like maybe it's because there's so much change, you know, with their bodies going on, or they can't control it, and they feel like they're out of control, and they see the change, and they would rather not see the change just because of the fact that they can't control their own change.
And me and you had an interesting conversation not long ago about control and how
Oh yeah,
that's an
that
overarching
seems to be the
thing.
the end means of.
A lot of people. Just
Yeah,
a lot of actions,
I
a
forgot
lot of
about that.
goals.
Yeah, like that. It's going through a weird phase, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk a bit about coding as well.
Code is really something,
Computer science,
computer science, yeah, as a whole. It's really something
especially.
that's new. It's a very, relatively new. It's a very large field. It's a lot of work to be good at, and it's very rewarding.
Actually, the logic behind code and computer science, you can see aspects of it in ancient times. I don't remember
Well,
exactly when they
not-
said a long time ago. You know,
Mhm.
I don't know if it was Greece or what, but I'm not sure what aspects of the logic they're talking about. Maybe it's something trivial, but the fact is that it's been a gradual. It's been improving, you know, stepwise for a
But-
long time now.
Yeah, but I would say within the last 20, 30 years,
It's definitely exploded.
it's just been an exponential explosion where possibilities have just...
Right, computer
Massively
science
going
itself
forward.
has been born and it's been
Yeah.
growing rapidly.
And I remember seeing some things, there's a large abundance and need for jobs in computer science field. Just
There
because there's not enough people going into it,
And
and there's just so much need for it.
for me personally, when I first realized that, or when I first was told that, I thought, well, maybe it's because computer science is really, really hard. Like, I don't know, whatever else. And then I learned that, no, actually, it's because they just don't have the knowledge, the general knowledge, because it is relatively new, a relatively new thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's been out
And
there.
It is there, like all the mathematics behind it and all like the knowing how of everything is really complex, and actually having a good foundation and understanding of all the aspects and what you're doing is really difficult. However, in practice, actually doing it,
It's not that hard.
it's not that hard. Anyone can do
We
it.
have what we call higher level programming language. I'm not a
Mhm.
I'm not a expert on the history of code and programming languages, but I know that it wasn't always higher level. We had stuff like C before the object oriented, and before
Mhm.
that we had just ones and zeros. I know it started with just ones and zeros and vacuum tubes. There's
Yeah.
actually a really interesting episode on Lex Friedman podcast about the history of programming languages with the co-author of the book, The Programming Language of C. I can't remember his name, but yeah, if you can find that, it's a really good episode. It's really enlightening. And actually, that guy talked about how you should push yourself to learn about the early days of coding and the foundation, the computer languages that are going on, machine language that's
Because
going on.
I think there's a large value in knowing where things come from, because then you can, because as we all
You have
know,
an appreciation
you have an
for
appreciation as
what
well
you're
as,
doing.
I think, if you know the foundation and like how things at a smaller level work, then you'll always be more efficient than the next guy
Well,
that
I
doesn't,
think you
because
have the
you know what's actually happening.
yeah.
It's
I think
not
you have
just
the
an
ability
idea.
to build on. You have a solid
Mhm.
foundation, and you can build
You don't
greater
rely as
things
much
from
on other
that.
things.
Right.
Like, for example, lately, I know me personally, and he shares some things too. I've been having sort of a code block, you could say, the last couple weeks.
Motivation. Lack of motivation to code.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself a complete novice, but I'm not quite. I'd say I'm beginner going into intermediate, and I'm starting to get to the point where I can only imagine very large goals, and the amount of work that I'm putting in, that it was put in, because
You don't really see the progress towards
I'm not
those
seeing as
goals?
much progress as much.
Yeah.
And I think for that as well is just because working so much online for my knowledge and constantly having to like research
don't-
things.
right.
It's not as
That's where college
forward
comes in. That's what I was about
in
to say.
school.
You can learn code yourself. There's a ton of great resources out there. There are a ton of great resources.
And there's boot camps.
For instance,
and
yeah,
stuff, but-
code boot camps, YouTube, whatever.
Mhm.
But really, if you want a really structured pathway, college is the way
Mhm.
to go, because I can say from experience, I don't know, you just learn
saying
a lot.
and doing is a lot. It's a very different.
You
thing.
can see your progress when
lot
you're
better.
going to
Mhm.
college, when you have that structured frame to work up.
Especially in a very math heavy field like computer science, because
Motivation, that's really important.
it's really, yeah. Whenever you're just in your room, like I know for me, it'd be like 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm just doing a bunch of practice things just to learn more about what I'm doing, and then I just keep doing it and doing it and doing it.
It does
every
take
night.
time, but yeah.
And then it just kind of comes remedial and kind of comes like I started losing, like I didn't never lost the passion for it. I still like want to pursue it, but I guess like motivation specifically, like the drive to want to get up and code.
Yeah, and I think another important thing you can do to motivate yourself is to have fun doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Find a way to make it fun, and if it's not fun, consider doing something else. Consider very seriously doing something else, because you don't always get to have fun, and you want to make sure that
It's the balance between
you give yourself the opportunity.
between work and fun.
Right.
Because I know for me, some things I've been excited about coding though, is maybe I've been looking forward to maybe starting to make some games or some things like
Right.
that, or making some apps.
Make a fun. Think of a cool project.
Oh,
There's
yeah,
tons of
fun
ideas
project.
out there.
Yeah.
And if you're a really a real beginner, you can go on different
There's
YouTube channels like
such
Tech
a
with Tim.
massive thing.
Tech with Tim is one of my favorites. He does
too.
really cool beginner projects like Tic-Tac-Toe on Python.
Yeah, or Hangman.
Sudoku Solver on Python.
Or username password screen.
Right. Well, that's
Really
not as
basic
fun, but
things.
yeah, basic stuff that
Yeah.
can motivate you to really pursue it.
You'd be surprised what's like really
Something to
cool.
give you a dopamine hit,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. And that's another thing I want to talk about.
Well, we weren't
Actually, PewDiePie talked about this on one of his videos. He kind of just mentioned it in passing. That he feels, and a lot of people kind of feel, that all the dopamine hits that we give ourselves as adolescents, with all the whatever it may be, social media, video
easy to
games,
grasp things.
right? They weren't always there. They're new. This generation is kind of the first one to be raised on that type of stuff, 24/7, and it's kind of worrying. You know, we don't really know the consequences of that, and for me personally, I can speak to the consequences. I am addicted, to those dopamine hits, whether it be video games or for me it's video games. But yeah, and it's hard sometimes to get motivated to do new things,
Mm-hmm.
to code, whatever it may be. And I think it's really important. Lex Friedman talks about this to have some kind of suffering. Like suffering, according to Lex Friedman, is essential to creation and creativity, or just motivation. Uh,
I know.
Creativity.
I know. For me, at least, something I've recognized lately, that I have like sort of my dopamine hits. Um, in the book Algorithms to Live By, they have a chapter called Explore and Exploit. And the difference between these and computer science are very literal. Exploring is whenever you're using new information. Exploit is when you're using information you already had. In the real world, it's a little bit more ideological than that. Exploring could be trying a new restaurant down the street that you want to try. Exploiting could be going to the one that you know that you love. Exploring is finding a new favorite. For me, I have my biggest dopamine hits exploring new little learning things. Like learning something new and little, exploring every single day rather than exploiting and building stronger foundations and stronger connections between things I already know the basics of.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really hard to continue in a field, even though I'm passionate about it, like
Okay.
computer science or in robotics.
To put in the grind.
To put in the grind rather than going into something else
Yeah,
and
that's
learning
very
the
natural.
basics.
Yeah.
Just because it feels so good. So like here lately, what I've been doing is going into the basics of chemistry, and in the basics of
Watching some Now Red.
not a lot of now
Yeah.
red and like
And
DNA
DETs.
manipulation and things like that. That's what I've been learning the basics of. Whenever that's not even what I'm really passionate about. What I'm really passionate about is like computer science, and that's what I really like to do. But I'm not getting that same explore.
And I think the environment that you put yourself is important. Is
Mhm.
important because whether that be what people you put yourself around, or what resources you work towards getting, or that you're using.
Yeah.
It's really important to remember
I think
that.
whenever
That's
I was-
why college is so important, because it's a
Yeah,
good
because then you're
environment.
surrounded by
Yeah.
like-minded people. Like I know for me, when I was coding the most and actually putting in the most work was whenever me and him, because whenever he started coding alongside me, and then we were sort of talking with each other about it, like projects that we're both pursuing together or independently, and we would go back and forth with. That's when I was coding the most.
Mhm.
But then whenever that kind of died off, simultaneously, my coding died off. So I think
Yeah.
having the people around you doing it as well is really important.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Because your personality and what you like to do is largely dependent on who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a big thing going into this next little bit, because for us, school's about to start on my end and his end, and things are gonna be
Busy,
busy for
But-
sure.
but good.
But
But gonna be
good.
learning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know for me, I'm gonna be doing a lot of stupid stuff
Senior year.
senior
High
year
school.
of high school, and he's going into sophomore.
Yeah. Switching majors,
Switching
actually,
majors.
from engineering to computer science. So
Mhm.
a little bit of transition, not much of one, but yeah, it's
Definitely,
exciting. It's really
yeah.
exciting.
It's always nice to, and for me too, it's nice seeing that, because then I know, sometimes you do have a switch. Sometimes, because that's another thing in the
It's
book.
important to reward yourself and have
Yeah.
fun. Whether that means switching or
Because if you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to keep doing it.
yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is. You can force yourself for as long as you want, but eventually you're going to stop. And that's another thing in the Algorithms to Live By book. It's optimal stopping, knowing when to stop to when you got
Yeah.
the most out.
Yeah, that's something I actually struggle. A lot of people struggle with.
Mhm.
I think. Who's that book by?
It has two authors.
It's called Algorithms to Live By.
Algorithms to Live By. I
That's
think one of
probably
them, I want to
specific.
say it's. I'm not even going to try, but Algorithms to Live By, I'll plug it in the description down there. It'll be an Audible link. It'll be, you can go there.
If it's your first book, then
Yeah,
you get it for free. Yeah.
I have a membership.
You have to create an Amazon account, but yeah, it's Audible's awesome.
Odds are you have one. Everyone has
Yeah.
an Amazon account, but Audible, you can sponsor us. Anyway, no, but we also wanted to another thing we wanted to talk about different
Different stuff that's going on.
going on in our lives.
Yeah,
and
I-
specifically you.
Yeah, I just got back from a trip to Utah, specifically
We're in
the
Texas,
Valley
by
of
the
the
way.
Gods. Yeah, it was a 13-hour drive up there. It was a really short trip. I went camping in the Valley of the Gods. As you know, we're still in the midst of COVID, so camping is kind of the only thing you can do. But I stayed in the Valley of the Gods for a night, and if you don't know what the Valley of the Gods is like, think of your favorite Western movie. You'll have all those plateaus and buttes, red sandstone looking things. I don't know if they're sandstone. But yeah, basically that's what the Valley of the Gods was. And there's actually a park called Monument Valley National Park. I don't know if it's a national park, but it's just southwest of the Valley of the Gods, and it attracts much more tourism. So the Valley of the Gods is basically not an off-brand, just a less crowded version of Monument Valley. So I went there, and it's a 30-minute, I want to say, drive to my particular campsite where I was staying from the highway. So you're on this gravel road, driving through these huge
Were
rock
you
formations.
by yourself? Was the people
Yeah, I was-
around you?
I camped by myself. It was a solo trip,
Yeah,
but
totally
the
by
nearest
yourself.
person that I was camping with in the Valley of the Gods was probably a mile away.
Oh, jeez.
3/4 of a mile, but I want to say there are only 10 or 15 people total
And
that were in the park. If you want to call it
were
a
you
park.
staying by your like were you staying in a how were you sleeping situation?
Yeah, it was a tent, tent and a sleeping bag. I parked my truck on this little plateau right off the road. There's a clear spot, little gravel drive, and
So was there trees around or
no,
just an image from my head?
yeah, okay, so picture the desert. That's basically what it is.
The
Shrubs, and little dips where the creek beds used to be in the wet season.
So you were just driving off of this gravel road.
Yeah,
and
it's
you
a
saw
17-mile
spot.
loop.
You just
Yeah.
saw a spot and you just
Yeah,
parked
and
there?
I researched it. It's obviously
The
it's a place
rules.
that people like to go to camp, and yeah, the camping sites consist of a space off the road. That's all it is, and it was really cool. It was peaceful. At night, it was the quietest thing you could probably ever experience, short of like whatever those chambers are called, float chambers.
Silent chamber or
Yeah.
float chamber. You had the salt.
Yeah.
Did you notice some like a peaceful? Like, did you ever just get in your head and start thinking?
A little bit. Mostly, I was thinking, I hope someone doesn't kill me in my sleep.
Oh,
It was no. When you're out there, it's kind of paranoid. I was paranoid, I guess I should say.
I would be too. Well,
Yeah.
luckily it's really flat too, so you could.
Yeah, you can see for miles. The thing is, there's no light for miles, so you need to bring your own light. But it's really dark.
The
at
good
night,
thing
yeah.
with that though, there's no light pollution. I'm sure you
Yeah,
saw a lot of stars.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. The stars are really spectacular. I'm sure there are places where they're even more spectacular, but
Did you get any pictures?
no, not of the stars. Yeah, but
I was
wish
just
I
thinking
would have.
about that
I don't
the
know if
other
it would have
day.
popped up on the camera, but it was really awesome.
Because light pollution's.
Maybe we can put some pictures in the corner of this.
Yeah,
screen
if I can
here.
find any images from the god.
Or I've got pictures.
Yeah,
too.
what is it called?
Valley of the Gods.
The Valley of the God Sky.
Yeah,
So, after Utah, you told me you went to Colorado.
yeah. I only stayed in Utah for a day, and then I just decided, well, let's go to the Rockies. It was an 8-hour drive. The day after I camped at the Valley of the Gods.
Just got up and went.
Yeah, I got up and went. It was hot, let me tell you, in the Valley of the Gods. I got dehydrated the morning of the first.
What were you eating and drinking there and all this?
Oh, yeah, so I was eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and drinking water. It was pretty basic. I also brought this little propane stove, cooked some scrambled eggs. I didn't get a chance to try to brew my own coffee because
Well, what about like activity wise? Did you find
Activity-wise?
yourself bored at any point, or was it more just you were constantly thinking, so it was never really?
I was more just constantly sightseeing, I think is a correct term, because it was really beautiful out there. Like, for miles and miles, it was nothing but these huge rock monuments and desert. There are actually not many critters out there.
What about like? I know you like you're out there in the wilderness, but I'm sure you charged your phone. How do you
Yeah,
charge
my
your
truck was right there, so yeah, as long as my battery doesn't die, then I'll be fine. Yeah.
Did you ever let the silence just sort of take over, or did you sort of keep music on?
No, It was silent most of the time that I was there. It was kind of nerve wracking. That's what I was. That's really the most nerve wracking part about it. Not that you're scared of a serial killer, but just the silence. It's just kind of unnerving because you're not used to it. And when you go out there, it's just kind of thrown upon you like a blanket, really.
Was it more of a ringing or was it just nothing?
No, it was just nothing. Like at night how you hear crickets, right?
Yeah.
No crickets, nothing. Like it was.
Just nothing at all.
Yeah, and the wind. The wind was the only thing you would hear, actually, which in my book is pretty much nothing. The wind on the tent flap, just all night long. And that's it. It
Did
was
you
really
experience
peaceful.
any rain or?
No,
No.
it was. I think it was the dry season. I don't know because
Well, it's summer.
to give you, well, yeah, obviously it's summer, but to give you an idea of how dry it was, you'll see cracked, parched earth where water once was. When you're in a desert, but you saw more than that when you're out there. For instance, I took a piece of bread out of my bag to make a peanut butter sandwich when I first drove up there for lunch. And I was eating my sandwich, and then I set it down to get my tin out and to start setting it up. 5 minutes later, I walk over and pick up the sandwich, and the bread is crunchy, like it's been sitting there all night long. And actually, it was a ham and cheese sandwich, and the cheese was melted, and the bread was like stale.
Were you
almost. It
just
didn't taste
constantly
stale.
under the sun? Or?
Yeah, there was no shade at all, except for the tent. But yeah, that's how dry it was out there. It was really intense.
What about the drive to Colorado? How was that?
It was really cool because I got to drive through the Rockies. Actually, Rocky Mountain National Park was closed due to COVID. Not closed, but you would need a permit to get in because of COVID and because of the large numbers that usually go through there.
So where did you end up staying there?
I went to Roosevelt National Forest. It's just south. It's east and south of Rocky Mountain National Park. I want to say it's like at least 2 times as big as the Rocky Mountain National Park, and there are lots of little bitty campsites all around. And I chose one. I actually ended up not even staying there another night because I was so exhausted. I just drove home.
So did you
15
just
hours.
arrive there and hang out for a while?
Yeah, I went there. I got there, and I was actually too late to get a campsite, so I stayed at a hotel. And then the next morning, I went out to the forest and did some hiking. I got some really awesome pictures. I got a little rock for a souvenir.
We'll add some pictures on the screen.
Yeah, I'll have to get a picture of my rock. Yeah, that's basically it. Then I ate lunch and drove home because I was exhausted. But I really want to go back and actually do some serious camping. 'Cause
It'd be
it's
fun to
really
do some
beautiful
hiking,
out
though.
there.
It'd be a lot more fun with,
More people. Yeah.
More people. I'd want to go.
Definitely.
It'd be fun.
Yeah.
And
you
also
should
it
go.
might be fun to go as a winter trip.
Yeah, when it's cooler.
Was it hot in Colorado?
No, it was like 80s.
80s. What about Utah?
Utah, it was 90s, triple digits.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was hot.
You know, it might be cool. I know me personally, I kind of would. I don't know if I'd prefer I think at night I'd prefer Utah, but in the day I'd prefer Colorado.
I don't know. Utah was awesome. It was an awesome experience,
Yeah.
but I definitely prefer Colorado over Utah. Just
You really
saying.
think so?
Oh yeah, Colorado is awesome. There's so much. I didn't get to go to Zion National Park. That's usually where people go when they go to Utah. At
Where's
least
that?
What I've heard. It's west of. It's about 4 hours, 5 hours
So it would
west.
have been an extra 4 or 5 hours on your trip.
Right, and I could have gone there, but the thing is, I already knew that I would need a reservation. I wouldn't be able to camp, so I figured I might as well try and go to Colorado and
do you
try
know how
and
the
camp.
reservations work? Like, how do you go about doing that?
National Park website.
We should do that, man. We should plan a trip and go during the winter.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Zion National Park.
Yeah,
Maybe we
especially
can go up
in
to
the fall.
Colorado.
We can do
Smoke
both.
a blunt.
We'll do both, man. Let's take
Yeah.
a whole week, man. 3 days there, 3 days in Colorado. Dude.
Yeah.
We just me and you. We can. Hey, how would y'all
Actually,
like
I want to
somebody-
invite Lucas too.
Let's
He's my
invite
other bud.
More
and
the
his
merrier.
buds. Yeah.
What y'all say? Podcast from Utah National Park.
Yeah, that can be a podcast goal. We'll write it down on our little checklist of things to do for the podcast.
We'll be in the middle of nowhere. Y'all can hear the wind he was talking about.
Yeah, it would be awesome.
It'd be
you
good
won't
for
hear
sound
much
quality.
about the wind. Yeah, actually, I don't know. Will it? There wasn't any echo. There were lots of mountains plateaus, but there wasn't any echo.
Because there's no walls.
Well,
I'm really excited
the
to see the
plateaus
sky.
would act as walls, but I would have thought that there were echoes. I guess it would have to be really loud because they were pretty far off.
I know for those of y'all, I don't know who or live where, but I've lived in a lot of different places. And I've lived from, inner city, like I lived in North Dallas. The light pollution there was insane. Like at night, you saw maybe the North Star and nothing else star-wise. But then I've also lived in places like, I'm not going to say specifically where, East Texas area, a little bit more to the west. I mean, yeah, a little bit more to the west.
East.
Yeah, like pretty mid Texas.
East.
Yeah, East Texas though. Besides the point, it was pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and you could see the Milky Way from where
That's
we
cool.
were. And I was thinking in the Utah though, you could see
Could see the Milky Way. Actually, something I didn't realize that stars did was twinkle. You know, you hear it in the song "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star."
Yeah.
They actually twinkle when there's not that much light pollution. It was maybe I was just dehydrated or high or something, but I saw them twinkling. I know for a fact they're twinkling.
What about did you see any aliens while you were in Utah?
No, I didn't.
Have you heard of Skinwalker Ranch?
I didn't see Post Malone either.
Oh yeah,
regrettably,
yeah,
he just
does live in
moved to Utah. Yeah, I don't know when, but he is in Utah.
I think he said he did like a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, from
That was a
from
little
LA.
bit, not pretty recent though. There's a ranch for those of you who don't know called Skinwalker Ranch. It's
I didn't
in
know that.
it's in Utah. So basically, okay, so it's known as like the alien hotspot. So they have all these different stories. There's a really good documentary called Bob Lazar on Netflix. You gotta watch it. It's really good. It's all these aliens and stuff. Basically, this guy Bob Lazar, he's always talking about how, like, you know, the aliens are real. You know, he's a really educated man. He's had this story since like
Michael
1980.
Kaku.
Something crazy. He always talks about how he worked at Area 51 and how he saw, or what he thought he saw, it was as he was walking through a hallway, he saw a glass screen and he saw an alien on a table. And then
What do you think?
But
Do
he
you
says
believe him?
that it was such a brief moment he doesn't know. He said it might have just been a person. But then here's the part that actually is a kicker. He talks about how that it was just well known around there that there is aliens among us and all this other cool stuff. And at Skinwalker Ranch, they talk about how cows just come up mutilated with all their blood gone. And all this other
People
cool
have pulled
stuff.
pranks bigger than that.
Yeah. All a bunch of really.
I'm just saying,
Yeah, I'm not
all
saying.
of that could be lies.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Every single bit.
However, I love the idea that it's not.
Yeah,
I love it so much.
it is cool. Really cool to think about. You know, there's this other episode of the Lex Rudin podcast. I'm telling you have to get on this. It's awesome.
He's been obsessed with it.
Yeah, I listened to it on the way to Colorado. Anyway, it's about existential threats and whether or not we're alone in the universe. I don't remember the name of the number of the podcast. Let me look it up. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, I'll talk about this.
This is a really good one. It's worth it. I'm
So
telling you.
I know for me specifically, I don't really. There might be aliens that have visited us, but I think the only interest they would have in us is our nuclear weapons.
I don't think they even.
I think that's the only reason if they have come to see us, I think that's the only reason they would. Because
Why do you say that?
Okay, so I say this because there was a rush. I think it was in the 70s. There was a rush, right? This rush was like, who can split the atom first, right?
Was
who,
it the
who can
70s? I'm pretty sure it was the
40s. It was
40s.
Yeah, it was the 40s. Okay, so they're like, who can split the atom first? Who can make an atom bomb? Like, let's do this. Okay, let's just blow up the place. And so I think if there are aliens, but first of all, I don't think that the government knows about them. I'm gonna clear that off the table because I don't think they're able to hold a secret that long.
Conspiracy theory podcast, changing
Yes.
our name. Now, there's a good book about the creation of the atom bomb called The Triumph and the Tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer. I would recommend it as a good audiobook to listen to on the road or something. It's
Oh, you
really
listened to
interesting
it?
story. Yeah, it's
it
good. It's about the life story of the man who helped create the atom bomb. Tested it during the World War II.
Yeah.
And that podcast, the one I was talking about, with that has to do with existential threats and such. It's number 83. The guest speaker is Nick Bostrom. Let's see if you can see that on my screen there. It's the Artificial Intelligence podcast.
I'll link it in the description.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know what I'm thinking. By Lex Friedman. Yeah.
Yeah, I would. The aliens. So, the conclusion today. We're all gonna turn into robots. Aliens are real, and you can go see nice stars in Utah.
Yeah, that's pretty much the podcast today. Thanks for joining us.
Leave a comment, like, subscribe.
Yeah, I guess that
share
kinda
it with
wraps
your
it up.
friends.
Comment.
Hopefully,
If you consider
it won't be
supporting the
4 months.
podcast by upvoting the video, giving us
Okay.
a thumbs up, smashing that like.
We'll try not to be 4 next time.
Yeah, see you next time, whenever that is.
Bye.